All right, welcome to the Krueg Show, everybody, as we get it rolling on a Friday, September the 1st, 4 o'clock on the West Coast, 7 o'clock on the East Coast. Jack Hammer in the house from the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat. We are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out, Emeryville and Corte Madera. I just ate there this afternoon for lunch. Oh, my goodness, I am stuffed with barbecue. Somehow, some way, I will get through the live stream, but I am stuffed on Pig and a Pickle right now. We're also brought to you by Marin Auto Glass, New York style Italian sausage, and Underdog. And we'll talk about more of our sponsors in a bit. But first, we're going to talk a lot of 49er football right now with Jack Hammer, who does a great job covering them with the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat. Jack's also got his YouTube channel that is thriving, and he's with us to talk Niners. Jack, good to see you, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to see you, too. It's Friday, right? It's always the best day.
I know. It absolutely is. Well, let's just jump right in and, a number of interesting topics here. One, I'm reading a story on Niners Nation by Jason Aponte. 43% of 49er fans believe the team will regret trading Trey Lance. That's a high percentage. ESPN's Jeff Darlington has weighed in. So the 49ers look like idiots for this Trey Lance handling and their gaffe of Trey Lance, in his opinion. What do you think? What do you think of how the Niners handled Trey Lance? Now you've had a couple days to think about it, digest it, kind of analyze it. Steve Young said, the Cowboys? How do you ever trade Trey Lance to the Cowboys? It just makes it all the more interesting. We'll get on to other things and talk about the season ahead, but let's start with Lance. What do you think? Are the Niners idiots, as Darlington said, for the way they handled Lance?
No, they're not idiots. They're not idiots for the way they handled Lance. It's definitely a bad trade, right? It's absolutely a bad trade, trading, 3 first-round picks and a third-round pick to take a quarterback that doesn't work out. It's definitely the worst draft trade that the Niners have ever had in the organization. The trade for O.J. Simpson is right up there, right, with it. That's, if you're old enough to remember the O.J. Simpson trade back in the late 70s. Most people probably aren't that are watching on YouTube. But, from that standpoint, I've seen enough of people talking about and trying to blame the 49ers for what's happened with Lance. And at some point, people need to realize that the player has some responsibility in how well they do as well. In this case, I've heard so much about, he only played 4 starts. He's only made 4 starts. How can you get rid of him? He's only made 4 starts. Well, do people actually watch? Do the people that are talking about this stuff actually pay attention? Because think about it this way. Because Trey Lance, the reason he only made 4 starts is this. It's real simple. He was hurt. How was it? He was supposed to make 17 starts last year. He made it 2. He didn't play 5 quarters. As a rookie, he made 2 starts. They tried to get him onto the field more, but he was injured. He was injured his first start, out in Arizona was that week 5. And I feel very strongly the 49ers were going to play him more, and he would have started again probably the next game against Indianapolis if he hadn't been injured in that game. Kyle Shanahan wanted to get him on the field. He talked about it a couple days ago, watching the team and being in the building in 2021. I know that they were trying to get him on the field, especially early on. It just didn't work out. And Trey Lance has a long ways to go. The other thing that I keep hearing is how he's going to be better off in Dallas, and how, like you said, the Niners are going to, it's going to come back to bite him. I don't know. I heard what the head coach out there said just recently about Trey Lance, Mike McCarthy. I think this was yesterday, and it sounds almost exactly like what we've heard from Kyle Shanahan over and over for the last 2 years, is that he's really smart. He is tremendous on the whiteboard, and we just need to get his footwork down. How many times have we heard that in a press conference over the last 2.5 years? And they're in the same boat. Basically, I think Guy Haberman nailed it out of the park the other day when he said, Lance asked to get traded. They traded him to Dallas. He went from a zoo and the media zoo and circus that was in San Francisco. That tent's been picked up, and it's been dropped in Frisco, Texas. And now they have the media zoo, and this is how it's going to be, to the point where I made a comment just basically talking to the 49er people. And the folks out in Dallas picked it up, and they feel like, they're like all in their feelings about what I had to say, which wasn't really a whole lot. I look at this whole situation, and I'm just like, let Trey Lance go. Let him go. We'll see how it works out. I think he might be a starting quarterback at some point in this league. I don't understand the people that say that Dallas is a better position for him, because it's not. It's just, the whole thing is, to me, is it's wild. And, when Kyle Shanahan says the 49ers are better, not now, in a better spot now that they don't have Trey, this is why. Because now they can focus on football and they don't have the outside distraction that they've been dealing with. The questions will eventually stop when the games start and they start winning.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I mean, it really interesting, though. Steve Young tweeted out, trade nothing to Dallas ever. And of course, he's got Charles Haley on the brain. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that the Niner Cowboy lore includes, Carmen policy and the 49ers trading Charles Haley to the Dallas Cowboys. And Haley was in his prime. He went on to Dallas. He won 3 more rings to give him 5 in his career, 2 in San Francisco, 3 in Dallas. And the Niners, Charles Haley kind of was the tipping point. I'll say this. The thing that really is just so interesting about this is the fact that he's going to the Cowboys. Think about it. You trade him to Dallas, the history between the teams. And to me, it's kind of like the 49ers are saying, hey, we know what this player is. And I kind of think it's almost like, I tweeted out today, it's sort of like saying to Jerry Jones, our football personnel knowledge is better than yours. And to me, it's also a loud statement that the Niners are all in on Purdy, want to make a clean break from Trey. But when they're trading him to Dallas, isn't it also a statement, a direct statement to Trey? It's like, hey, we don't believe that you're going to be an all-time great based on what we've seen. So much so that we're willing to hand you for a nominal price. Really, the price was the difference between, they were going to get a 6th from somebody, probably, right? So we're talking about the difference between a 4th and a 6th round pick. We're going to hand you to our arch rival Dallas Cowboys because we don't really believe you're going to be that special. And I get it from Jerry Jones's perspective. He's super impulsive, but it's really low risk. But when you sit there and you go, well, wait a second, something's going to be, one of these sides is going to be right. And the Niners may wind up looking smart for getting a 4th round pick for a guy who just never makes it. Or the Cowboys may look really, really smart for stealing a great young quarterback from their hated rival. And what I tweeted was, man, it's undeniable here that, man, this is a deal that's going to be dissected, remembered. It's going to have an impact on both fan bases. I personally like the fact that the Niners were decisive and were, really, truly, had a conviction about their personnel evaluation on Lance. But, man, this thing could be, if this thing goes south and he finds himself in Dallas, this is going to be a defining trade for John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And the fact that they moved him to Dallas just creates this, it was going to be memorable no matter what, but now it's even that much more memorable, don't you think? In a lot of ways, they've taken a situation that they could have sent him to some AFC team, some other team that's just not very good, maybe got a 6th, and maybe it's not a big deal, but they sent him to Dallas. What if he becomes awesome in Dallas? The Niners could look really, really bad.
Yeah, they could. If it didn't matter where he goes, if he looks good, they're going to look bad to a certain extent. But like you said, they made the decision that they were moving forward with Brock Purdy. They were decisive in their actions. That Brock Purdy is their guy, and if Brock Purdy is the guy that they expect him to be, it doesn't matter what Trey Lance does in Dallas. It's going to be inconsequential because the 49ers will be the better team. That's the way that I feel about it. I feel like right now they have the best quarterback of the two. Trey Lance has a ways to go. I think, I understand like where Steve Young's saying don't trade anything to Dallas. I get it because he's
got scar tissue.
Right. And I get it. And I even mentioned that in my article that I put out right when the trade happened was that, I mentioned that trade. The difference here is that Charles Haley was already one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Sure. Trey Lance isn't anywhere close, to that level at this point. And for him to become that type of a player, we're looking at a long time before that happens.
Yeah, no question about it. There's a number of interesting 49er topics. We're hearing word that the Niners and Nick Bosa may be trying to bridge a $4 million per year gap in negotiations. I just read on Twitter minutes ago from Matt Mayoko that if Bosa's ready and signs the day before the season, they'll put him out there against the Steelers at Heinz Field in Week 1. So if he signs September the 9th, which is a week and a day from now, they'll play him the very next day. What do you think of that? I mean, he's very valuable. I get it, but if he's really valuable, isn't he worth kind of making sure? I mean, this is a violent sport. I realize he's a great athlete. I realize he stays in shape. It's not football shape. I don't care what anybody says. I think yes, he's awesome, but I think he, to avoid any kind of soft tissue injuries, I think it's almost essential that he has 3 or 4 practices, don't you think, before a game? How do you see it? What's the latest Bosa could sign and play if you were making the call?
I would say, because of the fact that they're looking at this guy for the long haul, and listening to what Kyle Shanahan had to say yesterday, I would say probably Monday morning before, Sunday or Monday, somewhere right around that point, because I think that he wants to have a look at him. I disagree with Matt in that I don't think that if he signs on Saturday, he's going to play on Sunday. I don't, based off of what Kyle Shanahan said yesterday. It sounds like they want to see him and they want to make sure that he's healthy. And could he help them in the game against Pittsburgh? He might be able to, but like you said, it's having not played and all those types of things. There's things that funky things can happen that you just don't want. And they don't need him as much on September 10th as they need him, September 24th or, January, end of January, beginning of February, hopefully, for this team with what their goals are. So I don't see them getting this deal done on Saturday and him going out on the field on Sunday, that type of thing. I just don't see it that way.
According to Albert Breer, the Niners may be trying to bridge a gap. As I said, $4 million per year could be the difference. That doesn't sound like a lot, but in some ways it sounds like a ton. $4 million per year. Are we talking about base? Are we talking about guarantees? Breer writes, he says, the question is whether he's going to be the highest paid non-quarterback of all time. He will be the highest paid edge rusher. The difference between the two distinctions is less than $4 million per year, and the Niners and Bosa's people have been trying to bridge that gap for a while now. Niners remain optimistic that a deal will get done before Week 1. Of course, we're closing in on Week 1. The 10th is the game. Shanahan said that, he says hopefully we'll get a chance to get him into practice next week, and if he is, that'll make it a much easier decision for us. Breer added they have an artificial deadline coming up, which is the start of the season, and at some point something almost has to get done. It's when, not if. John Lynch, I asked him directly, hey, is there any chance you guys any percentage chance you would trade Nick Bosa? He said no. Shanahan didn't say it as directly, but he basically said the same thing. Do you think, let me ask you this, do you think other teams, Jack, are circling like, sharks with blood in the water making offers for Nick Bosa? Or do you think that the Niners, they're listening to the Niners, reading the tea leaves and not making an offer? What do you think's going on behind the scenes with other teams as they observe this?
I think teams should be calling. I mean, Nick Bosa's there's a reason why he's a defensive player of the year last year. He's one of the best ones out there. So go check it. You need to find out for sure. I know what they told you, and the question, the way that they answered the question out there the other day was no, pretty quickly. But hey, you never know. It's just like a couple of years ago, right? When the 49ers picked up the phone and asked the Green Bay Packers if they were willing to trade Aaron Rodgers to San Francisco. It's probably not likely, but they still picked up the phone and asked. So I would expect teams are doing that with San Francisco. those calls are probably coming in, and then they're probably short calls, right? But I think you need to at least make the call if you're one of the other teams. And really quick, the other part of this too, if it's $4 million is the difference is between the defensive end number and whatever the other player is, you got to do this. Did the 49ers not realize that this was going to be the number to sign Nick Bosa? Were they like all of a sudden caught off guard by like that Nick Bosa wanted to be the highest paid player that wasn't a quarterback? I mean, they should have known that. They should have known that going in. And here's my concern is this. The 49ers have a history of doing this kind of thing with these guys. They have a history of trying to play the edge on all these player contracts. And, and the difference with Nick Bosa is that Nick Bosa knows that he's worth being paid the most of any non-quarterback. And until they get there, he's not going to sign the contract. So I just don't see this working in the 49ers' favor unless they go to the number that they're being said that they need to get to. And the 49ers just keep dragging it out. They did it with Deebo Samuel. They did it with George Kittle. They've done it with all these guys. This is the different one, though, because this is a guy who he's made enough money that he doesn't need the 49ers way as much as they need him.
He's the best defensive player in the league in some ways. He's the best defensive player on the Niners, clearly. What do you think? Is there a walkaway price? I mean, $102 million or $103 million, I think is what his brother got. That's the record for guaranteed dollars. What if he wants the entire thing guaranteed? Then what?
Well, if that's the situation, then no, you can't do that. That's, there are some things where you have to say no, and that's the point where you do go ahead and you make a trade and you get a blockbuster out of it, kind of thing, right? If you're not going to get the deal done, then that's what you would have to do. If they're not, and 100 and whatever it is, it's 35. Say it's 35 million, 35 million over 4 years. That's 140 million dollars. They're not going to guarantee that, and so I think that's why there has to be a kind of a median point. But I think at the same time, if the 49ers gave him the $35 million or whatever it is, that he would take it. I don't think they're there.
They badly need him in week 1. Oh my God, they badly need him. Period. How do you feel about the defensive end depth? They brought back Hyder and Austin Bryant. They initially cut those guys from the 53. They have Beal. They put him on IR. They have Drake. They have Farrell. It's not a deep defensive end group. How do you feel about their outside pass rush coming into this game against the Steelers and Kenny Pickett?
I like the group if Nick Bosa's there because I like Clelin Ferrell as a second defensive end or Drake Jackson as kind of a second defensive end type of player. If it's Clelin Ferrell and Drake Jackson, then they're in trouble. But if they have those guys, as long as you have Nick Bosa, I think the other 4 pieces that you talked about are good fits for the 49ers and enough for them to be able to go in and do some damage. I think they're in a very similar spot to where they were last year. I think Ferrell is an upgrade to an extent over what they had behind, last season with Jordan Willis and Charles Omenihu. I think Ferrell's kind of like the Omenihu type of player, a little bit more of an edge rusher though. And then Drake Jackson, he's the Samson Ebicom type of player who's the hard worker, isn't going to necessarily beat you on the initial rush, but he's going to get his sacks off of the pressure generated by everybody else. And then I think you look at Kerry Hyder Jr. has that ability to go inside and outside as well. Austin Bryant, I really liked him as training camp went along. He looked very explosive off the edge. And the other thing that I liked about him is he did a good job of setting the edge in the run game as well. So I like their depth there, but their depth doesn't matter if they don't have Nick Bosa.
No question about it. One thing I thought was kind of interesting, I'm looking at on Twitter. Sometimes you think of some certain stories and they get repeated over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden it's just, you look up and you're like, well, wait a second. Is the premise even right? And one of the premises is that the Niners have all this urgency to win the Super Bowl this year, which they clearly do. I would agree with that part of it. But that the premise is that they have this urgency because their Super Bowl window is closing. I can't tell you. I've heard that I've heard that at least 15 times this offseason. Well, you know what? I mean, they got a good team. They're really talented, but man, their Super Bowl window's closing. And I'm looking at this, and my first thought when I heard that is like, no, it isn't. Their starting quarterback's 23. Their coach is really young. Their roster's really young. And yeah, is Trent Williams maybe in one of his final years? Possibly, but even he's probably got a couple of years left. The Niners currently have the 22nd ranked average age roster in the NFL. The average age of the 49ers is 26.1 years old. So that Super Bowl window of theirs is, I would say, wide open. How do you see it? I mean, 22nd out of 32 teams as far as age. They got a lot of youth on their roster. It is not one of the aging, decrepit rosters in the league.
I think they have some guys that are getting a little bit older, but at the same time, I think you look at it and Trent Williams probably has this season one more based on the roster moves that they've made. I think the 49ers feel like they're going to have him for 2 more years. I think that's partly why you didn't see them make a move for a tackle in the draft, is because they feel like they're going to have him for a couple of years. Kyle Juszczyk, I think this is it, the last year for Kyle Juszczyk in San Francisco, though. George Kittle's been around for a while, but he still has time left on his contract. He's not old by any stretch of the imagination. So when you look at the Super Bowl window, is it closing? It might be a little bit, it might be closed a little bit compared to, it's not wide open like it was last year, but I think that it's still open. And if Brock Purdy is the guy that I think he is, the Super Bowl window will be open for a long time, because when you have that position figured out, you can figure everything else and you can make it work. You look at the 49ers in 2020, right? The only reason that team didn't make the Super Bowl wasn't because you had injuries across the board. It's not because you lost Nick Bosa. It's not because you lost Deebo Samuel. It's not because you had like a record number of injuries that season. The reason that team wasn't a playoff team was because their quarterback stunk. Jimmy Garoppolo only played 6 games, and Nick Mullins was 2-6, couldn't help but turn the ball over. When they have the quarterback position right in San Francisco, they win at a very high rate. I looked it up today because of all the stuff that people have been talking about with Kyle Shanahan. They've won about 73% of the games when they've had a guy that knows how to play quarterback in the NFL starting. And I'm saying Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. In their starts are at about 72, 73%. It's a high number, and that's where they are right now.
Let's hit some chats right here. Blind Tom 61 says, there you go. $10. Jack Hammer saying, hey. Jeremy Price. He says, what's up, Jack? We no longer have a quarterback controversy, but the Cowboys do. We traded Trey for multiple reasons. First and foremost, he wanted out. Second, to go all in on Brock Purdy. Third, to give Dak psychological issues. Is that it? Is Trey Lance a plant? Is he a plant on the Cowboys to upset their rhythms and throw a media circus into their backyard? Ooh. Shane says, does Kyle come in at the 11th hour and say, get it done? Like with Trent, you guys are the best. Catch the rest later. Walking into Guns N' Roses. LOL.
Nice.
Where's Guns N' Roses going tonight?
I don't know, but that's welcome to the jungle, Shane. Welcome to the jungle.
Seriously, I wouldn't mind seeing a little Guns N' Roses tonight. Shane, how come you didn't invite us? Does Kyle come in the 11th hour and say, get it done? That sounds like a movie script.
It does. It does.
Bosa's on the line. Baker. Hey, Bosa, Shanahan, get it done. Get in here.
We're bringing you in. It's done.
Done deal. We're sending Jed's jet. Get on it.
Well, that's what happened. He's right. That's what happened with Trent Williams, right? Trent Williams, and that deal wasn't getting done. And Trent basically, according to him, called up Kyle, told Kyle Shanahan, hey, this is what's going on. And, they came in and they got it all figured out. And you just had to put a little bit of pressure on Farhan there. So maybe that's the direction that they need to take with this thing.
The Niners signed another kicker. It's just a precautionary deal. Jake Moody, the rookie from Michigan that they invested a 3rd-round draft choice in, has a quad injury. So Adam Schefter first reporting the Niners signed the kicker Matthew Wright, who was an undrafted free agent out of Central Florida back in 2019. So Wright is now on the practice squad. And interestingly enough, he has kicked for the Steelers among the three teams he's played for: Steelers, Jags, and Chiefs. And career-wise, Matthew Wright, who I'd never heard of, is 40 of 46. He's made 11 of 14 from 40 to 49 yards out, 6 of 8 from 50-plus yards out. He's 35 of 37 on PATs. But maybe most importantly, Jack, he has experience kicking at Heinz Field. And they say Heinz Field is one of the tougher venues for place kickers. What's the Niners' best plan week one? To go with the rookie with the monster leg and hopefully his strained quad gets through it? Or maybe go with the guy who's, he's a undrafted free agent, journeyman type, but he has experience kicking at Heinz Field, and he's got a little revenge on his side going up against his former team. What's the better play, Matthew Wright or Jake Moody?
I tend to lean towards Jake Moody because that's the guy you brought in, and if he's right, no pun intended, right there.
Right.
If he's good to go, then you go with him. But at the same time, Matthew Wright, you're talking about it, and all I could think about was that Matthew Wright down the middle. If he can hit that thing in Pittsburgh and you get those 3 points, or he doesn't miss an extra point, that's a big deal. That's what the direction you go. I think they're in a good spot right here. They have a guy who they really like, and they have a guy who seems to be a solid backup plan, but I think he's just a backup plan. I think you go with Jake Moody if he's ready to go.
Okay, that we already put that one in there. We got this one from Stephen Draper. He says, vanity and greed both. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan said anyone can be traded. Well,
yeah, they said you could even trade them if the number was right.
Ty Budd says guaranteed contract. If not, you get 70%. You get 70%.
Yeah, that's about, I think, what his brother's at is right around that number. I think pretty close to it if you look at his numbers.
Wow, that's what if that's $100+ million guaranteed for Nick Bosa. Okay, here's the question I would have: all this money devoted to Nick Bosa. I asked Kyle Shanahan the other day about the run defense, and let's just be totally frank about it. Their run defense has sucked in the preseason. They gave up 6 yards a carry to Denver, 6 yards a carry to the Chargers. Raiders ran it up the gut at will, short yardage. Any yard they wanted, they got. They weren't even going with their number one back. A lot of these teams weren't even going with their number one line. The Niners got gashed throughout the preseason. Bosa's awesome, and paying him a mint is fine with me. He deserves it. But how good's a speed rusher if teams can run, can gash in the run and they're looking at 3rd and 1 all day? I mean, you could have Bosa and not even get him into, obvious passing downs, or, he's a 3rd and long monster. But if you're never in 3rd and long, how do you take advantage? How concerned are you? I asked Shanahan how concerned he was about the run D, and he's like, well, based on the preseason, I'm very concerned. But then he kind of threw in some factors that made him not as concerned, like they were number 1 against the run last year, so on and so forth. But we haven't seen them plug the middle, and Kinlaw got bounced around in the run game against Philly in the playoffs. They don't have that DJ Jones piece. They got a lot of one-gap penetrators. They added a special one-gapper in Hargrave. But how concerned are you about the Niner run D? Are we going to see Najee Harris and Jalen Warren just gash the Niners in week 1?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about it. I wouldn't say that I'm overly worried about it, but there's definitely a sense of concern. It would be one of my main questions right now is can this run defense step up and stop Najee Harris and force the quarterback there to have to beat him? Because if that's the case, I think that plays into their hands. But you're right. It's in the preseason. I kind of forget about the preseason so much, because in the preseason, those preseason games, the 49ers weren't playing their starting defense very much. I think the only time we saw Fred Warner on the field, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was last week. So when the starters are on the field, I think they're going to be okay. We haven't really seen the starting defense. It's mostly been the backup defense. And I think that's where a lot of those issues are coming from. But at the same time, the reason I stop a little short with even that is because I was in Las Vegas and I watched the practice there, and I watched the Raiders run the ball down the 49ers against the 49ers defense somewhat at will, even in those practices. So there's some concern there, and there should be I would temper it a little bit, but I do think that there's reason to think that they need to step up that run defense.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's a major concern. I mean, I'm wondering which defensive tackle is really going to plug the middle, and do they have a guy who can consistently plug the middle? We haven't talked since they pared their roster down to 53. How did you feel about the way they did it? I mean, they lost Ilm Manning to Arizona. They chose Jalen Moore and Matthew Pryor over Ilm Manning on the offensive line. They went with 4 backup offensive linemen, including Nick Sakel. They wound up losing Manning to the Cardinals. And then they lost Deshaun Jameson to Carolina. I thought he outplayed Isaiah Oliver. I get the feeling that, the Isaiah Oliver, because there was some money involved there, they went in his direction. But if it was just based on how they looked this summer, I'd take Jameson all day over Oliver. And I think he's a better cover guy. And I don't think Oliver, even though he's bigger, I don't know how he isn't. To me, he doesn't look very physical. What'd you think of the way they pared the thing down? They also lost Marcelino to the Jets.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, the one that hurts was Deshaun Jameson, because I agree with you on that one. I think he had played at a pretty good level, to where you could see him getting a job over Isaiah Oliver. Oliver, I think, is here because of the $2.91 million guarantee that they gave him, and they weren't going to save any money really by getting rid of him. So I think that's why he's here. The other ones is in particular Ilm Manning and the other guy that went out to Arizona.
Ishmael. I'm not a big Ishmael fan.
Yeah, Keith Ishmael. I think what happened there is, in the way that I put it, is that shows the difference between where the 49ers are and where the Cardinals are. Ilm Manning wasn't one of the best offensive linemen on the 49ers. He's not a player that the 49ers wanted to be putting into a game this season. He wasn't a guy that they wanted to have on their 53, where he was a play away from having to go on the field. If he was going to be, they wanted him, but they wanted him to be on their practice squad because of development and those types of things. When it comes to now, in Arizona, he's one snap away from playing against starters, and he never went up against starters in any of the preseason games that he played for the 49ers. I know he looked good, but he didn't play at the level where you say, I want that guy on my 53-man roster. I didn't feel that way. So that one didn't surprise me that they didn't add him to the 53. It didn't really surprise me that he got picked up. I feel like Nick Zakelj deserved the spot. We saw him in training camp step in for at left guard for Aaron Banks in practice and hold his own against the 49ers defense. He did just fine. So I think he'll be in that role. He'll be okay. A lot of people got upset about that one, and I wasn't one of them. The Marcelino McCurry ball, that's a tough one, but I can see why he would go to New York. There's no opening for him here, right? They have 2 guys in Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw that are beginning early in their career still, but they're their main guys. They're the big paid linebackers, and then they've got 2 guys now in D. Winters and Jalen Graham who are going to be here for a long time too. So I think for him, it's the smartest thing to do. Go out, get with a different team where you might have a possibility of getting up onto the 53 at some point. It makes a lot of sense there.
I'm eager to see Steve Wilks' reaction publicly and how he handles things if the Niners struggle in any way defensively. I've heard people suggest that Wilks might be the scapegoat this year. And, the one thing that's really interesting to me is that D'Amico was so unbelievably positive. I never heard him say a negative thing about his players. Steve Wilks got a strong personality. To me, he seems a little bit more real. He's like keeps it 100. You know what I mean? And it's like, what kind of reaction are the players going to give him if there's struggles and he starts calling guys out? What do you think? I mean, it's a dramatic difference between D'Amico, who literally would never say a bad word, and Steve, who seems very honest and candid and maybe willing to tell you straight up, why they lost the game on Sunday. How do you think Steve's going to fare in this market with the media? How do you think he's going to fare with the players? He's coached a long time, Jack, but it is interesting. He's had a lot of different stops, and he's a very honest guy. It makes me wonder if there's cause and effect there.
I think there might be, right, because he has bounced around a little bit. If they do struggle, I agree. I think that'll be very interesting to see how that unfolds. I think he'll be very. I think he's. Here's what I think. When I listen to him talk, I hear a lot of Kyle Shanahan in the way that he describes things, and that he doesn't hold back, but he does hold back. If that makes sense, like he's not afraid to say, hey, we need to do. We're messing up here, kind of putting that on the players a little bit, but at the same time taking a little bit of responsibility. I hope that makes sense and that's coming across correctly. I do think that we're going to hear a very truthful Steve Wilks if stuff happens. And as somebody who isn't afraid to speak their mind, I kind of like it in a way. I want to know how he's feeling. Listening to D'Amico Ryans at the podium last year, the last 2 years, it wasn't worth the time because you weren't hearing a word. It was anything. I mean, you could hear him, but he wasn't giving you anything. Everything was good. Everything was perfect. Everybody was good. I think if we get somebody that gives us a little more information, that'd be a lot of fun.
I kind of agree. I mean, to me, it's going to be entertaining, nonetheless. I mean, I think that is a no doubter. It won't be dull. I mean, and I think Steve's going to be pretty candid, and I think it could make for some really interesting Q&As, and I'm just kind of wondering how that's going to wear over the course of the year. How do you see Shanahan divvying up the carries in the backfield? You've got a lot of good runners here. I mean, you got CMC, and there's a lot of talk that they're gonna, they want to manage CMC. The Niners have a plan to make sure that he stays healthy, which is good. He caught 52 passes in half a season last year. And a lot of people think he's going over 1,000 yards rushing and receiving this year. But they also have Elijah Mitchell, and they've used Ty Davis-Price, and they have J.P. Mason, and they like the end around to Debo. What do you think? How much? And we've even seen that from Ronnie Bell. How do you think the carries get split? And how do you think is it CMC's the one? Is Mitchell the two? Is Mason the two? Is Mason the three? Is TDP equal with Mason? I mean, we've seen these guys. They've all had their moments this summer, but now it's time, the rubber meets the road. How is he going to divvy up the backfield carries?
I think it's going to be similar to last year in that I think we'll see, obviously the bulk is going to go to Christian McCaffrey. I could see him getting probably in the neighborhood about 13 to 14 carries a game on average, right around that number. I think they want to keep his touches to about 20 a game. So that's why I put it in that range, because he's probably going to catch a good 5-6 balls a game. Let's just figure this. If he's going to catch the ball 5 times a game, he's going to run it probably another 13. I think that's about the number. And then in terms of the carries behind him, Elijah Mitchell is going to be the number 2. If Elijah Mitchell, as the number 2, if he stays healthy, he's a heck of a number 2 back. He was the Niners' number 1 back last year, right at the start of the season. Him as the number 2 behind Christian McCaffrey is a really nice compliment, because you have all the versatility that you get with Christian McCaffrey. Then you bring in Elijah Mitchell, who's more of a north-south power runner, but also has the ability to make plays with in the passing game. So I really like him. And then I think it's Jordan Mason as your number 3. So you're probably going to get, let's just say they run the ball 25 times a game on average, just to put a number to it. I think you'd get about 15 for Christian McCaffrey, probably 7 or 8 for Elijah Mitchell, and then the rest of those go to Jordan Mason. Ty Davis-Price, I don't think he plays very much. I think Jordan Mason's mostly going to be the guy that's up on game day because of his ability to play special teams, whereas Ty Davis-Price doesn't. And I think he's the better player anyway. So I think that's how it's going to be split up.
Let me ask you this, because we are, we're immersed in 49er football, and we're doing live streams, we're talking to other media people, we're at practice every day, and the 49ers, I think, have a lot going on. They've been in 3 of the last 4 NFC championship games. They're one of the Super Bowl favorites. They got an incredibly deep roster. They got a young, I think borderline star quarterback. We're going to find out. But there have been a number of people in the media that have commented that, why does the vibe around the Niners feel negative despite the fact that they've got so many positive indicators for the upcoming season? And yet there's this kind of permeating negative vibe that, Shanahan blew it and Lynch screwed up, and people are, freaking out because of an exchange where, Shanahan's asked about, is it, about the Trey Lance thing and how it plays, and he's getting defensive. And I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Is the tone of the offseason in your mind been overly negative compared to their reality?
If you listen to just the content creators, yeah. If you listen to the 49ers, no. I think the more.
Why do you think the content creators are skewing negative in your mind?
Clicks.
Negative sells.
Negativity absolutely sells. I did a video on Nick Bosa.
No, it doesn't. Oh no.
Well, I did a video a couple days ago.
I'm just trying to get negative on you.
No, do it. Come on, Larry. Let's do it.
No, it doesn't. You're crazy, Hammer. What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean negativity sells? You're an idiot.
Well, I am an idiot. I am an idiot for sure. Make sure you clip that. Somebody watching.
Where's that damn train? I don't hear any birds chirping today. Damn it!
It's coming. I think it definitely does. Like Nick Bosa a couple of days ago, there was the Redditor who said that the 49ers were going to trade Nick Bosa, and so I did a little quick video on that, and that thing had like 8,000 hits right away. I did the a positive one the next day, because the next day you get a report that they're in talks and things appear like they're going to be ready for day one or game one. And that one's like half the number, right? People love the negativity. You can talk it all you want, and people are going to buy it, eat it up. I've seen this. I just mentioned this on my channel the other day. There's a QAnon vibe to so much that you see, especially in the off season, because you can just say whatever you want, and you can say it in ways that there's just enough truth in it to make people say, yeah, that makes sense. When in reality, it's one of the dumbest things that you've ever heard. But it just, there's anyway, I need to shut up because somebody's going to get mad at me.
That's okay. What do you mean? I think you said negative sells. Let people get as mad as they want. Damn it. You're wrong. I'll tell you, you're wrong, Hammer.
It does.
You don't know, and you don't know what you're talking about. And your channel's garbage. And I can't stand Santa Rosa or the Press Democrat.
Well, that's the thing. Right. You got to be.
How's that? Is it, for those Democrats. The numbers have shot up over 500 in the room ever since I started screaming.
There you go. Keep screaming, Larry. Let's go.
You don't know what you're talking about, Hammer. All right. I had Grant on the radio today, and he went with this notion that he continues to go with. And I love Grant. I really think his content's very good. I think he's very entertaining. But he's creating a narrative that I don't know if he's restating a narrative that I just can't agree with on the surface or even on any secondary level. And when he says stuff, I do kind of give it a double, even if I don't agree, I think about it twice. He keeps insisting that Kyle Shanahan is on some proverbial hot seat. I love Grant, but I just don't agree. To me, the spot's only hot if Jed wants it to be hot, and Jed doesn't want it to be hot. Jed loves Kyle. Jed loves Lynch. He loves the job they're doing. They're making a ton of money. They're relevant. They're in the Super Bowl race. They got a deep roster. People are talking about them in the offseason. Come on. I mean, the Niners offseason talk is juicier than the Warriors and Giants in-season talk. I don't see Kyle on any hot seat at all. I think he's got, an extended run. Do they want to win the Super Bowl bad? Yeah. Are they super passionate about it? Yeah. Are they singularly focused? Sure. But I don't see a hot seat here. Am I wrong? Is Grant wrong? How hot is the seat for Shanahan and Lynch?
I think I think the seat, I think somebody might have turned the seat warmer on, with, maybe a little bit with the way that everything was handled when it came down to Trey Lance. But beyond that, no. Kyle Shanahan's been on the hot seat. According to Grant, Kyle Shanahan's been on the hot seat since 2018. So it's just, we'll just
leave a long hot seat.
Yeah, it's just he's been on the hot seat forever. But I don't make anything of
it. Do you think Shanahan should take criticism better? How do you think he takes criticism? The last couple of weeks we've seen him kind of, and what do you think? People are asking questions of him, and he'll turn around and drop and what do you think? And what do you think we should have done there? And he's like, he's putting some of the media people on the defensive. He's not doing it in any kind of a nasty way, but a lot of the reaction to it has been like really people like either surprised or put off by the way he's kind of sparring back and forth with the media. What do you think of it?
It depends. It depends on exactly what you're talking about. Like if you want to go over like just the one that happened the other day, I can understand why he got a little
debating
short.
Weird versus unusual.
Yeah,
versus
I can understand
unique.
I can understand to an extent why he got a little short with that, because how many times do you want the guy to say the same thing? Like how many times does he have to explain why Trey Lance is gone?
Right.
He's that, and I think that's the thing. And people will say, well, it's the reporter's job to ask them the questions. It absolutely is. But I think our job is also to ask them questions that are topical, not just to, it's a point of discussion, but he's already given this answer so many times. And that's why I think where he stopped and said, well, do you know why? Because because it's basically what Matt even said, yeah, I know why. I want you to say why, but he's already told us why. We already know, we already know why Trey Lance isn't here. We already know why it went wrong. We already know where it got weird, all these types of things. So to some extent, like with that stuff, there was one the other day where the guy asks him something about, do you regret kicking the field goal at the end of the game? And he snapped at that one. And on
right.
that one, I agree with that one.
That guy was claiming that that guy was suggesting that Kyle was trying to suppress the positive ability of Trey Lance by not allowing him to score, like that had any impact on anything, really. That was a little bizarre, I have to admit.
Yeah, and that
what'd you think? You said you agreed with it?
I agree with his response to that one. It's like, what are you talking about? We kicked the field goal to win the game. That's that's what I'm saying. So, it does that. Here's the thing, man. There's a couple of things that have at work here, right? Number one is, as fans, you want the tough questions to get asked. So I hear you. So we need to do a better job sometimes of making sure those tough questions get asked. But at the same time, when those questions get asked and the coach gets a little riled up about it, well, Bill Belichick's done this forever, right? Head coaches have gotten short with reporters for a long period of time. It's the back and the forth. And I don't know how Matt felt about it. I wasn't in the room that day. But if you ask a question and it kind of gets thrown back at you, I think that sometimes that just happens. I don't think the question from Matt was bad. I just think it was more along the lines of, we've asked this so many times. How many times do you want him to go through and explain the entire process that we just saw basically have seen since 2017?
There are people that have painted the picture that Kyle has been this like train wreck going through these quarterbacks. And just to summarize it, obviously they passed on Mahomes and Watson in the 2017 draft for Solly. We know they did that. And I know a lot of people rake them for that. But, if you really look at that, Shanahan's date of hire was February 6, 2017. That means him and Lynch were 7 months behind the other teams in draft preparation. And I don't fault them for passing on on going after a quarterback when they didn't get a process at all. They're going to make some huge dramatic impact quarterback, and you're going to go after a guy coming out of an air raid system that's sub 500 at Texas Tech. I mean, everybody's got the 2020 hindsight now. Now you say, oh, what the hell? Mahomes, man. But then it was not quite as clear cut. So that one I don't think is fair. Then they traded a second for Garoppolo. To me, I think that was good value. Then they had a shot at Brady, but Brady was 42 and Garoppolo was 29, coming off a Super Bowl appearance. They stayed with Garoppolo. A lot of people rake him over the coals for that. I don't, and I love Brady, and I wanted to see them go for Brady. But, let's be honest. I was just hoping Brady had something left. Now he did. He wound up playing to 45. He won another Super Bowl, but nobody really knew that. You're talking about trading a 29-year-old player, moving off a 29-year-old Super Bowl defending NFC Championship quarterback who the team loves for a 42-year-old guy. And who knew at that point how long he could play or how effectively? I think we were all kind of expecting Brady to kind of fall off the table. Then he moves off of Garoppolo for a young quarterback in the draft. And then they draft Lance over Mac Jones and Justin Fields. And then they sign Sam Darnold and Brandon Allen and move off of Lance and trade him to Dallas. Of all of his quarterback decisions, to me, if you said, what's the worst one? I don't love the latest one of signing Darnold and trading Lance to Dallas at a loss. But the other ones I think are defensible. Well, give me your opinion on. I mean, they're 7 years in. They may or may not have their quarterback of the future. I think they do, but a lot of people don't think they do. What do you view as Shanahan's biggest mistake at the quarterback position during his regime here?
As far as biggest mistake, I mean, I guess you would say that not going after Mahomes in hindsight is the biggest mistake, but like you said, not going after Mahomes in 2017 made sense. When everything, if you just take everything into account, you take into, the 49ers were not a good team in 2017. When they took over, when John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan stepped in, this was a team that didn't have talent. They didn't have players. And so they needed to build a roster. And they went and they didn't go after a quarterback. Instead, they said, you know what, we're going to get a quarterback next year. The thought is that their focus was going to be on Kirk Cousins. Okay, that's fine. They went instead, and in 2017, they built the interior of their defense because that's where they feel like their defensive line and the linebackers, that's where they needed to go. So they got two guys, Solomon Thomas and the linebacker whose name is escaping me right now, Reuben Foster, right? Those are the first round draft picks. Those are the first two players that they selected for this regime. And in hindsight, those picks didn't work out, but they were smart picks in that's their philosophy. 2018, they stuck with their philosophy again. 2019, they stuck with their philosophy again. 2020, they did it again. 2021 is the first year that they got off with that, and they went with a quarterback, and it didn't work out. And they kind of, what have you. This discussion on Shanahan and the quarterbacks, it's one where from a lot, if you stop and you take a step back and you use logic, I don't think it's as wild or weird as people want to make it out to be. They decided that they were going to build the roster in 17. They decided, and they were going to get their quarterback in 18. Well, that's what their plan was. And then at the trade deadline, they got an offer for a guy who everybody around the NFL at that point, Jimmy Garoppolo was the hot name. I remember when that trade went down, that was the hot name. They brought him in. Everybody in San Francisco was excited. He comes in, he wins his first 5 games. Everybody thinks that Jimmy Garoppolo is the greatest. And you can't give me a name of a media member who said that he wasn't. And then in 2018, he's the guy. But what happens in 2018? He gets hurt. And so you lose a bunch of games because Jimmy Garoppolo's hurt, and you have Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard as your backups. But they'd already made that decision. And then in 2019, he's healthy. They go to the Super Bowl. 2020, he's injured. They lose a bunch of games. And I think the injury in 2020 is why they decided that they were going to go and they were going to get a quarterback. They weren't sold at any point on which direction they were going to go. They just knew that they needed to make a change at the quarterback position. They wanted to go with the veterans to start with. They wanted to go with Deshaun Watson. We know what happened there. They wanted to go with Matthew Stafford. They got beat by the Rams to that one. So then they switched gears and they said, okay, well, we're still in this position. We're still at 12. We're not going to be in. We don't want to be in this position again. We don't expect to be in this position again. So we can jump up right now. We can take one or two guys, or we can take one of these top guys. We think there's a few of them here. There's two that we really like. They just chose the guy that had the longer, that wasn't as ready to play, I think, as they thought that it was going to. And I don't think they realized quite how raw he was based on what they saw on film. And remember, they weren't able to really look at him the same way as they could if this had happened in 2022. So they went in the direction that they went, and it didn't work out. And they found Brock Purdy. They got lucky to get Brock Purdy at the end of the draft. Absolutely. Just like Bill Belichick got lucky on Tom Brady in the 6th round, and so on. And it's paid off. And if it works out and he's the guy that the 49ers think he's going to be and the guy that I think he's going to be, it's going to be fine. And I think your view on the 49ers quarterback position really comes down to this. If you thought that Jimmy Garoppolo, if you didn't like Jimmy Garoppolo, you think that this whole thing has been awful. And if you're okay with Jimmy Garoppolo and you felt like he was a decent quarterback, then you don't think it's a big deal. And I kind of fall in that category. Jimmy Garoppolo won a lot of games for the 49ers. When Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy, this team won a lot of games. Their problem was that he just didn't stay healthy. And if they made that decision, like Kyle Shanahan said the other day, they traded for a guy and they stuck with that guy for 5 years, 6 years, whatever it was. And, in terms of what happened with Trey Lance, do I think they made a mistake with Trey Lance? No, I don't. I don't think they made a mistake with Trey Lance. They gave Trey Lance opportunities to win the job. They gave him every opportunity to win that job his rookie year. He didn't do it. And then when he didn't get it, they kept trying to find ways to get him on the field. That didn't work out. One, because the players didn't like the whole 2-quarterback system, which I don't blame them for. I wouldn't like that either, because I think that's a janky way to do it. And then, Garoppolo goes down against Seattle. He comes in to a tie game against Seattle. They lose. They go to Arizona the next week. He plays okay. They lose, but he gets hurt. But he played good enough, I think, where Kyle Shanahan even said, in that lead up to the Indianapolis game, it's a bummer that he's hurt because we wanted to see more of Trey. I think they wanted to start him there. That's what I'm saying. I think they wanted to play Trey Lance against the Colts. I think they wanted to keep moving. Once Garoppolo went down, that was the opening. They felt like they were going to be able to get him out there and do their thing with the guy that they just spent all these picks for. But he got hurt. Once he got hurt, now you have to bring Jimmy Garoppolo back. And I think that's the point where they said, we're just going to ride this out with Jimmy until we're out of it. And they never got out of it. They got to the point where they won the NFC. And then they come back the next season. They come back last year. Did they bring Jimmy Garoppolo back because Trey was having a funky training camp? There could have been a little bit of it. I think the other reason, too, is because, as Shanahan was saying the other day, the whole process, do you remember what happened? They couldn't get rid of Jimmy. Nobody wanted to take Garoppolo. So there goes the train right there. See? The
damn
train going by. And so because they couldn't trade him, they get him back on a reduced deal as their backup. And they're lucky as hell that they did, because when Trey Lance gets lost less than 5 quarters into the season, now you have a guy that steps in and he keeps you in the playoff race. You're actually doing really well until he goes down. And that all gave Brock Purdy the time that I think he needed to develop. So I don't agree with this whole notion that he doesn't know what he's doing. I think they do. I think the reason that they made the move for Sam Darnold is because they were ready to move on. Like this whole thing, in hindsight, you hit it right off the beginning, with the trading of Lance you hit on it as far as that they were going to trade Lance. You were a little ahead of that. I told you it wasn't going to happen at the draft, that it was going to happen later, and that's what happened. So we were both kind of on track that once everything settled down, that the trade.
I said it first. No.
You did say it first, but you were wrong, Larry. You were wrong.
I didn't have the right timeline. But okay.
But and so you take all that into, and it's just a long way of also like now here's the other piece of it. And this might be which not even on the topic, but it is in a way is that now that Trey is in in Dallas, which you're hearing is the same people that have ripped the 49ers for their handling of the quarterback position all along, are now saying that he's going to get developed in Dallas. And my question is, how is he going to get developed in Dallas? Because for the last 2 years, all that these people have said is that the only way that Trey Lance can get better and can develop is if he plays.
And now
he's not going to
string.
play. He's not going to play. He's in the same position in Dallas that he was here. So you got to stop. You got to pull your heads out of your asses at some point and actually pay attention to what's happening. Because,
well, not only that, I mean, I think a lot of the reports, people are saying, well, the people that are trying to make it sound like there was this burgeoning market for Trey were like, hey, there were 9 teams interested. Well, they listed all these teams, and then today those teams are pushing back. Eric DeCosta said the Ravens didn't, the Niners called us about Trey, asking us if we were interested. That doesn't mean we're interested. That means they were shopping him. Detroit basically said the same thing. Brad Hopkins was like, hey, we weren't interested. That's fiction. So, I mean, it's like, who really knows? I bet you they were getting hardly any offers. Dallas came in, offered him a 4th because Jerry's impulsive. And we'll see. But, I'll tell you the one thing that's really interesting is that because they did trade him to Dallas, people are going to notice here, and either the Niners are going to look smart because they got off of a quarterback that couldn't play and stole a 4th-round pick from Dallas, or if Trey, flourishes in Dallas, the Niners are going to look really, really bad, and the Cowboys will have taken a franchise quarterback potentially from their arch rival. To me, and the other thing that's really interesting to me is that the Niners talked endlessly, Lynch and Shanahan have, about, hey, just because we're moving him doesn't mean that we don't think this kid's got a bright future. It's just his time had run out here. But come on, this is the bigs, man. This is the big leagues. If you really think that Trey Lance is going to be some, awesome Pro Bowl quarterback, you are not trading him to your arch rival, the Dallas Cowboys, for a mid-round pick. So, I mean, I know the Niners want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to say great things about Trey and still get the best draft pick compensation. But the fact that they've delivered him to Dallas for kind of a nominal price, hardly a bonanza in a return, kind of says that they don't believe he's going to be great. So, I don't know. When I hear them say, well, we think Trey's going to have a really bright future. Do you believe that? I don't.
I listened to everything that they said, and I, especially what I heard from Kyle Shanahan on Friday night after the game, I didn't buy a whole lot of what he was saying. I felt like he was just falling on the sword to be the good guy, and to diffuse the situation because there was so much focus on it. I think Kyle Shanahan just wants to be done with Trey Lance. Like he just wants to be done with this whole thing. Yes. And so he's taking responsibility. I wish I had, listen to it. Do you think Kyle Shanahan really wishes that he didn't call a run? Like, do you really wish that, like, is he sitting there thinking, yeah, that's my fault that he got hurt because I called a running play right here? Do you think no, it's not. I mean, come on, and so, no, I think that they like Trey. I think they feel like there is potential there. I also think that they feel like it's going to take a long time for him to ever get to that potential. He definitely looked a lot better in this camp, but he still has a ways to go, and we'll see. Like, one of the guys on the comment section trying to tell me that the plan for Lance's rookie year was to sit him. I understand why you would say that, because you heard what Kyle Shanahan said. Kyle Shanahan saying that, it's going to be very hard for Trey Lance to come in here and beat out Jimmy and all those kind of things. There were a lot of things that he said during Trey Lance's rookie, lead up to his rookie training camp, and even early on, where he tried to make it sound like there wasn't going to be a quarterback competition. But again, you just had to open your eyes. And I understand, like, there's a lot of people that weren't at training camp, so you didn't see what was happening. You didn't see the way that he was playing. If there wasn't a quarterback competition in that camp, then Trey Lance doesn't go down to Los Angeles against the Chargers in those joint practices and split reps with Jimmy Garoppolo. If there's not a competition there, You don't go into that preseason game against the Chargers down in Los Angeles and say, we're going to give Jimmy the first series, and then we're going to give Trey the second series, and then we're going to go back to Jimmy. The whole reason that they were doing that was because there was a competition. Now, they didn't want to say it was a competition, but anybody that was watching this should know that it was a competition. And Kyle Shanahan has since, over the last couple of years, talked about how hard he competed, about how there was a competition. He just recently talked about how he kept trying to get him into games, which I do agree with. I do believe that he was being honest when he said that he wanted to get him in there as a rookie. So it's just the way that it is. Just didn't work out.
Couple last ones before we wrap this thing up. It's Niners Steelers. Let's peek ahead. We've talked a lot about the Niners. Steelers are 3-0 this preseason and looking pretty sharp. Kenny Pickett looks much better in year 2. They got a two-headed running back combo in Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Anthony McFarland also has got a lot of speed out of the backfield. Freiermuth is one of the NFL's better tight ends. They also get a gigantic rookie tight end from Georgia, Darnell Washington, who made an amazing one-handed catch at the Combine this year, and he's just a behemoth. And then they got George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, Calvin Austin as well, who the Niners know. Allen Robinson comes over. So they've got some weapons offensively, and then defensively, Cam Hayward in the middle, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith coming off the edges in that 3-4 front, Minkah Fitzpatrick on the back end. They are a little old and a little young on the corner with Joey Porter Jr. and Patrick Peterson. Peterson's long in the tooth. Porter's a rookie. How do you see the matchup week 1? What kind of game do you see between the Niners and the Steelers on the road there to get this thing rolling?
I think this is a really tough matchup for the 49ers. You look at, you kind of look at that and you're like, this is based off of what they were last year. This is a game that's going to be easy for the 49ers, or a game that they should win, whatever, right? The Steelers were 9-8. They almost made the playoffs last year. They were in it until the end. The only problem that they had there was they kind of had some issues at the quarterback position early on, so they didn't quite get out of the gate. But you look at their quarterback play: 12 touchdowns, 14 interceptions last year. Pickett wasn't very good when it comes to that. Neither was Trubisky, but they got the running game, and if they can get their running game going and they stick to the running game, this can be a really interesting game. And we'll probably break this down a little bit more next Friday. But when you look at this game, one of the things that I think could happen is Kyle Shanahan struggles in games where the opponent sticks to the run. And if they're not able to stop the run against Pittsburgh, and so they're able to kind of stay on that, it's going to cause some problems for him, because what happens is Shanahan starts to realize he's losing possessions, the time's running out, and he starts to panic in a way. He's not patient at that point. The game plan that he comes in with kind of gets thrown away, and it's, we got to throw, we got to hurry, kind of puts themselves in a little bit of a hurry up mode. We're chasing points kind of thing. We saw that last year to an extent, like against the Falcons, and we've seen it at other times in his career in San Francisco. So I think this is one of those games where if they're not careful, it can come down to that type of thing.
It's going to be interesting. Steelers are a covering machine under Mike Tomlin as a dog. Niners are 2.5-point favorites. 51-27-3 against the number is what the Steelers are as underdogs. 15-4-3 as home dogs. And it is really interesting when you think about it. Steelers did win 7 of their last 9 games last season, but they averaged 18 points a game. The Niners under Brock Purdy averaged 33 a game. A lot of people saying this might be a defensive battle because the 49ers have uncertainty at quarterback. But uncertainty, I don't know if there's really – I think that might be an overplayed angle, to be honest. Do the Niners have uncertainty at quarterback, or do they have a young quarterback who in his rookie year averaged 33 a game, and he's got a bevy of weapons and the best play caller, and they're going to win this game 33-21?
Yeah, no, they don't have uncertainty at the quarterback position. Anybody who watched the 49ers, anybody that's paid attention to them last year with Brock Purdy, anybody that's watched Brock Purdy in training camp this year should come away feeling like the 49ers know what they're doing there. And so I can see this being – I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I can see this being a game where the 49ers go in there and they move the ball better than people expect. This is the Pittsburgh team defense is really good. Usually when they play at home, they do a good job of against the pass. But Joe Burrow went in there last year and put up 346 yards in the air against the Bengals. That's the kind of stuff that I think Brock Purdy's able to do here. I think the 49ers go in. I think they're going to win this, but I think it's going to be probably in the low 20s. The 49ers don't score a lot of points usually with under Kyle Shanahan in week one. It's usually a little bit slow, especially when they're playing against decent competition. The Lions a couple years ago notwithstanding. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, but I think that the 49ers have enough on offense to stay in it. I just don't know about their defensive side. I'm a little worried about that if they don't get the Nick Bosa deal done.
I had an incredible opportunity this week to talk with the great Joe Montana, man, and it was very, very cool. I enjoyed it immensely, and he's just, Joe weighing in on Purdy to me is great stuff. I'm going to share the screen here, and I want you to listen to me. I asked him about Purdy, and tell me what you think of his answer here.
Joe, let's talk a little bit about Brock. A lot of things that he does well. I mean, he processes well. He throws with timing. He throws with accuracy. A lot of the same things that you did. Do you, people have compared him, and obviously that could be a burden because of how great of a player you were. But do you see any similarities in your game compared to his? And what do you think of Purdy so far?
Well, I never really try to compare, one quarterback to another because the styles are all different.
Sure.
But the one thing you can look at are the things that you said that, he processes quickly, ball comes out of his hand quickly, he makes good decisions, and he throws accurately. And you can't ask more of a quarterback. And as you can see, that system fits him and his style because he plugged in pretty quickly there. I mean, to come in from where he was and be thrown into that game, hey, my hat's off to him. I look forward to seeing him play. He's exciting, and he's got a pretty good team with him, and that always helps out a quarterback anytime when you got some weapons like they do.
Joe, let's talk.
There you go. A little bit of the great Joe Montana. What'd you think of his commentary on Purdy there? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, no, he's on the money. That's partly what you saw from Brock and you still do, is that he just gets the ball out quick. That's one of the prerequisites of this offense is that you need to be able to go to the right spot, but you need to get it out quick, and he does that. And he did it right off the bat. The other thing that I found interesting, it's not from Joe, but it was from Kurt Bankert, who was with the 49ers a little bit last year. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, but that was good too.
But he talked about how, when Brock was the backup to Jimmy Garoppolo, he would spend about a half an hour after practice going through the game plan because he wasn't getting the reps in practice. So he was doing it himself, which I bet, almost every backup quarterback probably does that. But to then be able to step from there and do what he did, it just shows that he was ready for the moment. And we saw really strong glimpses of Purdy being the playmaker during the preseason. And so it was a little bit of a surprise what he did, but then you, like Montana said, you've got all that talent around you. So that helps lift you up a little bit too. And I think the biggest thing that Brock Purdy did last year was he didn't try to make plays that weren't there. If a play wasn't there, he didn't throw the ball.
Here is Bankert. This is the soundbite you're talking about. This was on FanDuel television. Listen to this. Kurt Bankert was a former Illinois quarterback who was in the Niners locker room as a practice squad guy and an extra quarterback, and he has an interesting perspective on Brock Purdy as a rookie.
I mean, last year was just crazy. You had obviously like Trey at the beginning, he got hurt. Then Jimmy rolled through the year and they started doing really well. They traded for Christian McCaffrey. Then he got hurt, and then Brock comes in. And it's just funny to see how Brock excelled in that offense, because while I was there for my 3 months, he was the third string guy that just barely made the cuts. And he was the rookie, and he was pretty much treated as such. And then to see him come in and save the season and resurrect what's going on, and also add crazy value and become, in my opinion, the best player, the best quarterback that they had last year, while he was playing. It's just really cool to see that dynamic change. And I wish that I could have been a fly on the wall a little bit longer to see how they treated him after he stepped in, and they were like, oh, wow, he's the guy.
What did you see from him before he got sort of the love or the nod? Were you noticing hey, I think this guy's pretty freaking good?
Yeah, he's just fiery, competitive, and you just knew every single day of practice he was gonna do the same exact thing. He already had this kind of that mentality to at the end of every practice, he had the script and the plays that he didn't get in practice that Jimmy got because he was the backup. He was walking through them after the practice was over. Like, and it was 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes every single day. And that's just what he was doing. And so you knew, like, oh, like, he's not just a rookie. And the thing is, I came in and I was behind him, and it was like, hey, we need to get him as many reps as possible, get him ready. Like, you're not competing. And so that was his role, was being the number two, being the best that he could be. And then him knowing that, like, hey, there's been injury history here. Like, I have got to get ready to go. So he owned that moment. And then obviously he was comfortable enough in the offense to go, like, make plays that were outside of the system. I mean, last year was just crazy. You had, obviously.
There we go. A little Kurt Benkert. That was with Kay Adams. Interesting stuff there, though. Just that from a guy who was shared the locker room with Purdy, and he basically, it is interesting how Brock that first year, and Greg Papa's talked about this, on flights, he'd get on the flight, sit in the back, be kind of quiet. He was very respectful of Jimmy, very respectful of the fact that it wasn't his time, and he just was going to put his head down, work, learn the offense. And you know what? I mean, in a lot of ways, Purdy's a great example to all, backup and third string quarterbacks. You don't know when your number is going to get called. All you know is that in the NFL, with the way bodies get broken, your number's likely to get called at some point. And you can either, prepare like and get ready for that moment, or it can take you by surprise. And we've seen quarterbacks that weren't ready to play. And Brock, I mean, think about it. Brock played really well in the summer, played well in the preseason. That was August. He sat all of September, all of October, all of November. I think he came into that game against Miami. I think it was like December 13th. We're talking about, 4 months later almost, and he gets 0 blitzes. They're bringing the house, all kinds of pressure, and he's responding, and not only won that game big, despite coming in trailing, he ran the table and averaged 33 a game and won 2 playoff games. So it's pretty incredible stuff. I know there were a lot of people that wanted to see Trey Lance, and that kind of muted the whole enthusiasm for Purdy. But I think if people were really objective about what we saw last year, I think by almost any measure, you'd have to be like, wow, that was a very impressive rookie performance.
Oh yeah, no, it was extremely impressive. And then, it's one thing to do what he did during the regular season, but then you watch what he did in the postseason, the game that he had against the Seahawks. And I felt like the game against Dallas, I know that was the first time he didn't throw 2 touchdown passes, and people were acting like he didn't play well in that game, but I thought he did very well in that game, managing the game. He might not have made all the plays that you want him to make, but he made the plays that mattered, and he got the win. And I do feel like if he had stayed healthy in Philadelphia, I think that game, I don't know if they win. I really like their chances of winning, though, because they were able to keep that game close for a long time in the first half. And if they had Brock Purdy, I think that game just turns out differently, because the defense, I don't think, is pressing as much as they did.
One last one, and then we'll read some supers and bolt for the door. Give me one player that you're really excited to see, and give me one player you're really concerned about going into the year.
Really,
either side of the ball. Somebody that you're really, fired up about watching because you think he's going to add a lot, and somebody that I'm worried about that guy. I'm worried about how he's going to play.
There's a couple of guys I'm excited to see. One of them, I'll just give you both of them. I think I'm excited to see Javon Hargrave along that defensive line, because I think this is he's a big piece of that. I think he gives them what they've been missing since they let go of DeForest Buckner. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. The other one I'm looking forward to seeing is Colton McKivitz. I think Colton.
Damn it, Jack! I said one. Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just stole your other one. Just stole yours. I'm looking forward to Colton McKivitz, because I think that McKivitz is going to be better than everybody thinks.
And as far as, you're like kind of crossing your fingers based on what you've seen. Is there somebody that you're a little nervous about going into this regular season?
It's Isaiah Oliver, number one, if he is the guy that's in the slot. And if it's not Isaiah Oliver, if he's not there, then I would say I'd probably go with the defensive end. If it's Drake Jackson, I think I would have that. If it's Clelin Ferrell, not so much. But if Drake Jackson is the guy that decided to start opposite Nick Bosa, I'd be a little bit nervous about that.
I'm really excited to see Ronnie Bell and Braden Willis. I think Braden Willis is going to establish himself as tight end too. I think he's a playmaker, man. I love what I see on the practice field. He's made some phenomenal individual catches. He doesn't get tons of reps because there's 4 tight ends and there was 5, and we haven't noticed him that much. He doesn't have the biggest profile, but this guy you can just tell is a playmaker. And same with Ronnie Bell. I mean, Ronnie Bell's got great hands. I mean, you think about it. This team's got Ayuk and Debo and Jennings and McCaffrey and Mitchell and Juszczyk and Kittle, and they just got a bevy of weapons. And now they've added 2 really reliable, really solid football players in Braden Willis and Ronnie Bell. So I'm really eager to see those guys round out a terrific skill position group. And as far as I'm concerned about the run D. I mean, Hargrave, one gap penetrator, Givens the same, Kalia the same, T.Y. McGill and Kerry Hyder. They're none of those guys are real pluggers. The pluggers got to be Kinlaw and Armstead. And I haven't seen Kinlaw do it well enough or consistently enough. I'm concerned about the run D because I'm glad that they have Bosa and hopefully they'll get him signed. And I love Drake Jackson, but to me, I mean, what good's Bosa if you're constantly in 3rd and 1? So the run D is my big concern. Let's read a couple of these supers here. Stephen Draper says Kyle Shanahan acts like a mean drunk at tough questions. There you go. Okay. We all know that guy. Ty Budd says, tough questions. Are you threatened to lose your credentials?
No.
No. You can ask any question you want, really.
Yeah.
Make it stank eye.
I don't know about, I don't know about that. I think, like for me, I asked the question about Trey Lance, after all the stuff was going on in the media. I don't think Kyle really liked that question a whole lot, but I felt like it needed to be asked, and I didn't feel bad asking it. I do think that there's some things that they might see as going over the line. They might say something to you, but I haven't been involved with it yet. But I usually don't get in those types of questions.
To me, I spend 90% of the time trying to ask questions that will give you guys, the audience and the fans, more information and better perspective. That's what I'm looking for. But there is, let's say, 5 to 10% of the time that you just have to ask the tough question, or at least the direct question. The one that I asked last week is, when are you going to decide on your number 2 quarterback? And is there a chance that you'll juggle those guys throughout the year? And he's like, yes and yes. And then the next day, everything changed. So I don't know, sometimes though and I don't think he loved that question either. And I wonder about the reaction that he got to his answer. And if that made him kind of change things or speed things up the next day, who knows? But sometimes you got to, at that point, it was towards the end of camp. They'd been having this high-profile competition. It's one of the biggest stories in the NFL. He had to know that the question was coming. We're at the end of the preseason. Are you going to name your second quarterback? And he said, we may wait until minutes before the Pittsburgh game, and we may juggle it throughout the year. And I thought that was an interesting answer. The next day, he kind of pivoted off of that. So, but sometimes you got to ask direct questions. James Foster says, Jack Hammer does a bang-up job, right, Krueg? That's right, bang-up job. Jack Hammer does a great job with the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat. We got this one. Ty Budd says, Cowboys picked up Trey only to scout our offense. He's saying it's reconnaissance, which is actually, it's not a strange concept. I actually believe that the 49ers may have picked up or may pick up Ian Book at some point and put him on their practice squad. He's a NorCal guy, but he also was in camp with the Eagles this summer. I could picture them doing something like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that could be a part of it. You got to remember the other thing too is their defensive coordinator already has a pretty good idea of what Kyle Shanahan wants to do, considering the two worked together for 2 years in Atlanta.
Couple other supers that I want to get to here. We got this one from David E. McCarthy already saying Trey needs to improve his footwork. Come on. Well, it's interesting. It's like we'll see. Is Dallas's system a better fit than the Niners system? Some people think so.
Yeah.
Blind Tom 61 says, "Please see my comment at the top. Thanks." Did I miss a super?
No, he had a super chat earlier. I was looking. I'm trying to. There's just so many comments. I don't see it. But there was a super chat that he put in earlier for $10, but there was no comment with it. I know we hit it, but I don't see. I don't see it.
Damn it, Tom! No, I'm just kidding. I thought I hit every super there. Glass City said, "I just looked at 2019 team defensive for overall and per game rush D. The Niners weren't even top 10 in either category, and we made it to the bowl." Yeah, but I mean, they had DJ Jones in 2019. He was not there at the end when Damian Williams lit him up in the Super Bowl for some extra yards. But DJ was a force in the A gap, and they don't have that force right now. If I were the Niners, I would look at like somebody like Robert Cooper, who the Eagles and Saints or Seahawks, I think, took a look at, the former Florida State kid, who's just a plugger, man. He's 320 pounds. He's great against the run. I mean, I think they're going to be looking for this player in about 2-3 weeks. I mean, Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders ran at will. Now, some of that was rookie linebackers, but a lot of that is they got a lot of one-gap penetrators. They don't have a big A-gap, turn-off the inside run guy. It's got to be Kinlaw on paper. But Kinlaw sometimes can look really good against the run, but he doesn't come off blocks and make tackles. He's more of he will absorb other linemen and free up the linebackers to run, but he doesn't come off of blocks that well and grab running backs and throw them to the ground. I mean, I watched that Charger game. I saw him a number of times flash penetration in the backfield, but then if you look at the box score at the end of the game, he didn't have a single tackle.
Yeah, and he's right. I mean, you're looking up the numbers real quick. I think it looks like they're 23rd overall in yards per attempt allowed during the regular season, the 49ers. But they were able to they were forcing a lot of turnovers. They had a hell of a pass rush. The NFL is an interesting one because you don't have very many teams that really are willing to stay committed to the run. And I think that's partly why it's not that big of a problem, because most teams aren't committed to the run. Like the 49ers will stay committed to the run. The Atlanta Falcons will stay committed to the run. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are one that will stay committed to the run if they can. So there's some teams out there that will, but overall they don't. But I do see it as an issue, especially if you have a team that's going to stay with it and they're fine with slowing the game down. Most teams in the NFL won't do it that way, and I think that's why the 49ers got away with it in 2019, because their pass rush was just so good, and they were turning the ball over at such a high clip.
One last one. Glass City says, Jack says Kalia Davis is looking good versus the run. I think Kalia Davis is one of the really interesting players to watch. He wasn't healthy most of camp. He moves incredibly well for 320 pounds. I mentioned they don't have a DJ Jones. He's the closest to it as far as build and burst. I don't know that he's as good against the run, but he could be better than DJ against the pass. What do you see with Kalia Davis, and do you think of him as a wild card going into the year? Because there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of speed, but we haven't really seen him on the field very much. But somehow, some way, he found a way to make the roster over Kerry Hyder, Marlon Davidson. There were some decent defensive linemen that he beat at T.Y. McGill. I mean, they obviously like Kalia Davis.
I like Kalia Davis. I think what I like about him is I think he is good against the run. He's shorter, so he has good pad level. You watch, he didn't play much in the preseason, but that last week of training camp when he came out, he had a pop right off the beginning. One of the first plays that he was out there, and then on Friday night last week against the Chargers, right away when he came into the game, you saw him basically reestablish the line of scrimmage on the other side, and since he got in there, all of a sudden you saw the run defense pick up, because now the linebackers can run to the ball, and they're not getting blown back. And that's that's the thing, he's not going to get blown off the ball. I don't see him in that way. I think the other guys right now, I think that's where they struggled, is because Javon Kinlaw and Kevin Givens really struggled to anchor against the run, and they were getting driven back, and the linebackers it's hard to fill as a linebacker when you have your defensive tackle 4 yards off the line of scrimmage.
Last super, Jeremy Price says your guys' prediction for the season record. And then Mike Thompson jumps in with, good question, Jeremy, 12-5 or 11-6, according to Mike. What do you think, Jack? What kind of record do you envision for the Niners?
I had them at 12-5 in my prediction right after the schedule came out, and I think it's still going to be right around that number. I think 12-5. They catch a break, maybe 13, but I think 12-5 makes the most sense.
You're crazy.
I am crazy. I am a wild and crazy guy. Especially
I'm going. I'm 12-5. That's outrageous. I'm going 11-6. Okay. That's like one of those shows. Have you seen those shows? It's like you're going to take this side, they're going to take that side, and they're going to go 12-5. 12-5? You got to be nuts. What do you got them at, Bob? 11-6. All right. All right. Thanks to our sponsors, Marin Autoglass. Go to marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030, New York Style Sausage Company. Check out our brand new sponsor in the top corner there, Underdog Fantasy. Click the link in the description. You can sign up using the promo code Krueg, Krueg, and they will match your first deposit up to $100. That's right. We'll be using Underdog Fantasy every week this football season to do fantasy tournaments with our listeners. Jack, great stuff. Appreciate you. What do you got cooking? You got any high school football tonight? We got a little Northgate TAM action out here in the creek, and I think I may go check out some high school football if I don't fall asleep.
No high school football. Our freshman team played Wednesday night, won 35-7. Game was tied 7-7 at half. They wore them out, came out in the second half, and blew them out 28-0 in the second half, 35-7.
How did Young Hammer do?
He got a tackle. I was excited about that, and he played some special teams. He'd been sick a little bit the week before, so he didn't play as much as he wanted to because of the fact that he was sick. So we're looking forward to, now they have a long break. Their next game isn't until next Saturday, the 9th. So he's ready to go, practice today, and he's ready to go next week.
Great stuff, Jack. Always great to wrap with you. Week 1 is just around the corner. I can't wait. It's going to be a great season. Thanks for jumping in, and we'll talk to you soon.
For sure. Look forward to talking down the road.
There you go. The great Jack Hammer, Santa Rosa Press Democrat. He does a phenomenal job covering the Niners. A bang-up job, I say. All right. Let's thank our sponsors once again. New York Style Italian Sausage, Marin Autoglass, of course, our good friends at Underdog, and Pig and a Pickle. And I went to Pig and a Pickle today with the great Damon Bruce. We had a little lunch there. Said hi to Damon Stainbrook. Had some brisket, some pulled pork. Man, I'm stuffed. I'm absolutely stuffed. What do we get this one? I'm old Greg says, wink if it was peg leg. I'm not really sure what the hell that means, but what the heck? Thank you. Anyway, a lot of fun though. Great time. Go check out Pig and a Pickle. The barbecue there is awesome. We went to the spot out in Emeryville, in the Emeryville Public Marketplace, and the food is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Had a little potato salad. It's just fantastic. Fantastic barbecue with the smoke ring, the brisket, amazing. Didn't bring over the brisket chili, didn't have the potato chips cooked in beef fat, but it was amazing. Andrew says brisket is top notch. Jimbo says, "Yeah, you look a little heavier, Larry." Thank you. Yes, I'm definitely heavier today. Harry Poppins says, "Larry, do you have a tattoo?" Yes, I do. Yes, I do have a tattoo. I have a tattoo. I got one in college. What can I say? Mike Thompson says, "Great show, Larry and Jack." You know what? I thought it was just marginal. TZ says, "Larry, are you a celebrity at Pig and a Pickle?" I don't know. I don't know if I am or not. But it was a lot of fun today, and it was great to see Damon Stainbrook, and we love Pig and a Pickle, the title sponsor of the Krueg Show. All right, we are going to bolt for the door, but first let me show you what Pig and a Pickle looks like. This is their location in Corte Madera.
New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krueg Show. Holiday weekend. Hope everybody has a phenomenal Labor Day weekend. Be safe out there. Have a good time. Maybe barbecue. Tilt one back for me. I believe tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. we're going to wrap with the coach back in the house in our normal time slot, unless you know something I don't know. But I'll reconfirm with the coach. Looking forward to some great stuff next week on the channel leading into Niners and Steelers. And then Monday morning this week, Damon Bruce and I are going to do a show. In fact, we'll be doing a show every Monday morning at 8 a.m. 8 a.m. on Monday mornings, me and Damon Bruce, a little co-channel extravaganza coming up. And we're going to start our first one on Monday, on Labor Day. So Mike Thompson says, happy Labor Day to everybody. Josh, has any more shows tonight? I don't know. Maybe I'll jump in with Danny and Carlos after Giants Padres tonight. We'll see. We'll see. I'll say this. I filled in today on the 95.7 The Game morning show for Bonte and Shasky on the morning roast with the great, yesterday it was the great Alan Stiles. But today, we had different co-hosts today than yesterday, but it was a lot of fun. Anyway, what I was going to say is Tuesday, I'm going to be sitting in for Guru. Guru's sick, so I'll be on with Steiny at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. On Tuesday. You can catch me on 95.7 The Game. The channel is blowing up. Thanks to all of you guys for helping make it that way. Just as we're sitting here today, we just came off the biggest month in the history of the channel. That's right. In the last month, we have had almost 1.2 million views of our videos or live streams. We have had over 170,000 watch hours. We've picked up 1,500 subscribers, and we are currently sitting at 2,258 subs. So if you're in the chat and you've yet to hit like and subscribe, please do hit like and subscribe and support the channel. Also, if you go to our YouTube page, there's a store. You can buy merchandise. Everybody who buys anything, I do a customized video for them. And I've been doing a lot because we've been moving a lot of merchandise. A lot of people ordering shirts, T-shirts, a lot of cool stuff on there. And I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel in that fashion. The latest T-shirt, do I have it here? Let's see if I can show it to you guys. It's we designed it the other day. Where is it? Damn it. Oh, here it is. It says the Krueg Show logo on the front, and it says you're effing lazy on the back. And it's a phenomenal shirt. So I gotta wear one on the show. But yeah, we designed that last week. Teasy in the house says, let's effing go. Good job, Larry and Kevin. Much deserved. So yeah, anyway, a lot of good stuff today. It was fun week filling in on 95.7 The Game. And Also, I should mention Joe Montana. It was really cool to talk to Joe Montana. We got this one right here from Junk saying deloading the shirt. There you go. Anyway, Jimbo says everyone admires hard work, Larry. You're the champ. Thank you. Appreciate that. And on that note, when someone calls you the champ, that you just got to get out. Have a great night, everybody. A little high school football tonight. I might watch a little G-Tech in Louisville right now. Haynes King, who started at A&M, transferred to G-Tech. I kind of want to watch Haynes do his thing for G-Tech. I'm already one game into the college football season, and I lost last night. I took Florida with the points against Utah because I thought, man, no Cam Rising. SEC team on the road against a Pac-12 team. Oh, yeah, give it to me all day. No. Not so much. Anyway, good luck to all you guys wagering this weekend on college football, and we'll check you out tomorrow on the Krueg Show.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle.